Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Have you ever wondered why you might be crashing with this unexplained daily fatigue, even if you're lean, fit, and generally healthy? Well, today we're looking at the metabolic impact of silent glucose spikes, a phenomenon that's actually happening inside our bodies every single day.
Think about your typical afternoon. You eat what you thought was a perfectly healthy lunch, and bam, you're exhausted. We usually just blame a bad night's sleep or that classic midday slump, right? But the source material actually points us to this invisible problem. We're talking about a relentless daily cycle of blood sugar spikes and crashes that silently affects literally all of us. And the biggest takeaway right out of the gate here is this: you absolutely do not need to be diabetic to be strapped into this exhausting metabolic roller coaster.
So let's look at Section 1, the invisible roller coaster, anatomy of a spike. To see how this works, think of your metabolism kind of like a frantic, high-stakes factory line. It's totally invisible to us, but it dictates our energy, our moods, and our long-term health. When you eat, especially if it's refined carbs, step 1 is this rapid glucose rise. The fuel enters your bloodstream incredibly fast. Immediately, your body sounds the alarm for step 2, insulin release. Picture insulin as this frantic factory manager, right? Sprinting down the hall, sweating, holding a massive ring of keys to unlock your cells and aggressively shove all that glucose inside just to clear it out of the bloodstream. And because insulin goes so hard in response to that massive spike, we inevitably hit step 3, the sudden blood sugar drop. The factory floor is suddenly completely empty and your energy just totally plummets. Now look at this massive number, 130. That's a 130 milligram per deciliter drop in blood glucose. The research shows it's entirely possible to hit a peak of, say, 190 about an hour after eating, and then violently crash down to 60 just a few hours later. It's this sheer mathematical difference, this massive 130-point swing that triggers that vicious 3 p.m. brain fog, the sudden shakiness, and those intense cravings for a sugary donut. I mean, your body literally thinks it's running out of fuel.
Moving on to Section 2, the hidden long-term damage, unseen cellular stress.
So look, a single spike and crash, that's normal physiology. It's pretty harmless. But let's look at what happens when you're unknowingly trapped on this ride day in and day out. The source data uses some pretty heavy medical terminology here, but let's break it down. When your cells are flooded with rapid glucose, your mitochondria, the power plants of your cells, are forced to process way too much fuel all at once. They get overworked, electrons escape, and that creates reactive oxygen species, or free radicals, which leads to increased oxidative stress. This excess glucose also physically attaches to proteins and fats, forming advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. All of this kicks off chronic, low-grade inflammation and endothelial dysfunction, which is just a fancy way of saying damage to the delicate lining of your blood vessels. This whole cascade even causes LDL cholesterol particles to oxidize and actually get trapped in your artery walls.
And this excess reactive oxygen species is exactly why we need to pay attention here. It damages your proteins, your fats, your DNA, and the very microscopic structures of your cells. The danger isn't eating a slice of cake at a birthday party once in a while. The real danger is the repeated daily exposure to this oxidative stress. When every single meal you eat causes a massive spike, you're heavily burdening your body's cellular architecture, basically laying the groundwork for cardiovascular disease and metabolic dysfunction long before a clinical diagnosis ever happens.
Which brings us to Section 3, refined carbs versus whole foods, dismantling the calorie myth. It really all comes down to physical structure. On the left here, we have refined carbohydrates. Picture highly processed foods, sugary drinks, white flour. They've been completely stripped of their natural fiber. And without that fiber, they're digested almost instantly, causing severe, violent surges right into your bloodstream. Now contrast that with the stabilizing natural power of the whole plant foods on the right. Whole grains, legumes, intact vegetables, these possess cellular structures and a really powerful fiber barrier. This natural matrix physically delays the movement of glucose into your bloodstream, which gives you a nice, slow, gradual absorption.
Let's look at Section 4, what the data shows, tracking metabolic stability.
Continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs, show us exactly how healthy people without diabetes, actually respond to these foods in real time. Just compare this stable math against the large swing here. A healthy, stable metabolic response to a meal might start at a baseline of 85, gently roll up to a peak of 120, and smoothly return to 90 3 hours later. Beautiful. But look at the large swing pattern. Starting at 85, rocketing all the way up to 190, and then crashing hard down to 65. The data proves that an ordinary meal absolutely shouldn't push a healthy person up to 180 or 200.
If it does, you're riding the roller coaster, and your body is definitely feeling the whiplash.
So what do we do about it? Section 5. How to find stability, safely disembarking the ride.
We know the mechanics, and we know about the hidden damage. So how do we actually find stability? Well, the sources lay out these exact actionable steps for stabilizing your blood sugar and building real, long-term resilience. First, prioritize high-fiber meals. Adding just 10 to 15 grams of fiber from things like beans or oats creates a powerful natural barrier in your gut. Second, choose intact whole grains and legumes instead of refined flours. Third, move your body after meals. And fourth, prioritize sleep and manage stress, because cortisol directly influences how well your body regulates insulin.
Let's actually zoom in on step number 3 for a second, because this is super fascinating. 15. The research shows that starting a short walk, just 15 to 30 minutes after you start a meal, can drastically blunt a glucose spike. Seriously, just a brief stroll can reduce your peak glucose by 10 to 30 points. It is genuinely one of the most immediate, powerful, and surprisingly simple tools you have in your toolkit.
And here's the micro-narrative of why that works so beautifully. Muscle contractions during walking literally turn your muscles into a sponge for glucose. When you move, your muscles absorb that sugar right out of your bloodstream through pathways that don't even require a massive insulin surge. You are safely clearing the glucose away, completely bypassing our frantic factory manager and keeping your internal environment perfectly calm and stable.
Which brings us to our core takeaway, beautifully summarized by the source material. Small daily habits can create a more stable metabolic environment, and stability is often where better health begins. Remember, you don't need to be diabetic to care about your blood sugar. You just need to focus on stability. Smoothing out that curve protects your cells, eliminates the brain fog, and finally stops those crazy afternoon cravings.
The power to stabilize your health is literally in your daily choices. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. As you sit down for your next meal, ask yourself, are you feeding your cells or are you just buying another ticket for the roller coaster? The choice is entirely yours.